Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. I am Wes Dove, and it is my honor and privilege today to have with us Larry Cain. Larry's a seasoned district manager. He's a certified business performance advisory with Insperity. He brings over 30 years of experience in elevating organizational efficiency and driving sustainable growth for businesses across diverse sectors. So Larry was also a contributor to the Real World Examples chapter that wraps up the Values Advantage, a brand new #1 bestseller it's not even released yet. It's in pre-order. Gosh, we've already had more than 200 copies spoken for, which is kind of cool because the average self-published book never reaches 200. So we're excited about that. It's not even out. Larry is also going to be an executive panelist at the upcoming Leadership Legacy Experience with Dove Development Consulting on June 12th, 2026. Larry, thanks for being with us. How about you give a brief overview of your background, talk about the industry you're in, please?
Well, Wes, thanks for including me. Happy to be here. As you mentioned, I've had the good fortune of working with businesses going on actually 40 years at this point, on the sunset of my career, not the sunrise, and everything from the smallest mom and pops to Fortune 500, everything in between. Started off my career working in the broadcast industry, running radio stations, doing like consulting work for television and radio companies around the country, and then got into more consultative endeavors. I had my own company working with the cost reduction work and that sort of thing. It's just always been kind of a problem solver for small businesses. And it's one of those things I always like to start those conversations with folks around, hey, what's the biggest problem on your plate? Because I learned a long time ago, if you can solve problems that aren't technically yours, then people start trusting you with the ones that are. I try to help them solve those problems. And now currently at Insperity, we provide outsourced HR and cost containment strategies for companies that really help them with their people strategy. Because as you know, and I know, inside of a business, it's people, product, and process. And your people are really the foundational element of any business. It's hard to do anything unless you're doing it with and through people. And when you treat your people better, they treat the business better. When you treat the business better, ultimately you get the results that you want. So.
Brother, that's why we've been getting along as well as we have. Unfortunately, so many organizations in every industry that you and I both see have it backwards. It's usually product, process, then people, if they think about that at all. So we're working to flip the script on that. Now, you said foundation. And so the subtitle of the Values Advantage is The Foundation for Leading with Clear Purpose, which was my previous book that I released in 2025, Leading with Clear Purpose. Talk to me, Larry, about what's been your clear purpose over the years for accepting leadership responsibility, because it's not always about the money.
Right. Well, and that's why leadership conversations matter to me, because everything I do, whether it's personally or professionally, it comes back to really one simple idea. The best work happens when you take care of people. My path into leadership was never about chasing a title. It was always about finding better ways to add value. Over time, I've learned that influence shows up long before a job description does. So leadership kind of found me through service, not through ambition. And like in your book, Leading with Clear Purpose, I love the title. That really resonates with me. My clear purpose for accepting leadership responsibility was and still is to help get people where they're trying to go. I mean, keep it simple, right? And often they didn't even think they could get there. So if you can help people, what's the old saying? If you can give people what they want, they'll take what you have to give. But a lot of times leaders, they've got to find out, hey, what is it that you want? It's like, I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. I think it's his law of addition. It says that leaders add value by serving others. And that's the lens I try to use every day. If a decision doesn't add value to the people involved, my teams, my clients, my community, then I rethink it. I want to be an adder, not a subtractor. It's like that law in his book. I love it because it talks about, I think it's like 90% of the people that are subtractors, they don't necessarily realize that they're subtracting. The folks that are adding to relationships, 90% of them, they have to do it very intentionally, because you have to think about it. Inherently, as human beings, we're selfish creatures. And so it's always what's in it for me, that sort of thing. So having more of that servant leadership perspective, and then also that law of navigation also shapes everything that I do. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a true leader to really chart the course. And in uncertain times, folks don't need a hero with all the answers. They need a calm guide who can see the horizon, anticipate the waves, help them make the next right step, see more than before. That's how I do a lot of that stuff.
I love the reference, Larry. You know the background that I've got. I mean, for the last 25, 26 years, Cindy and I have probably learned more from John Maxwell than anybody else that's spoken into our lives. And today, so you'll get to share the stage with John's CEO, the owner of all John's companies now. John's transitioned that ownership over the last 5 years or so to a gentleman named Mark Cole. And Mark's going to do the closing keynote at the Leadership Legacy Experience in 2026 on the values that he and John work on every day and build into the organizations they serve, and the values that define Maxwell leadership. So it's pretty cool that you mentioned John and the ties that we've
Yeah.
got, and Mark being part of that event with us. Now, you've alluded to this and you've talked about your background a little bit. You've touched a little bit on the folks you serve. Talk a little bit about what that looks like professionally. Who is the specific target market, and how do you actively work to make that impact?
I've got to always flip it around because I realized a long time ago I've got a couple sets of customers, and my most valuable customers are the folks inside the four walls of our business, and then there's the clients out in the community that we serve. So, which ones do you want me to talk about?
I love that you put it that way, Larry. You start with inside, because you're right. So many times, I'm going to share this with you. A couple of years ago, I watched a business owner who had amazing relationships with his clients, but the team, he couldn't keep employees. And I said, dude, what's the disconnect here? Your clients love you, your employees hate you. And he said, my clients pay me, so I do whatever they want. I pay my employees, so they should do what I tell them. And I said, dude, you don't deserve employees. So talk about them first.
Well, that's kind of funny. So, yeah, I always tell folks, look, nobody works for me; they work with me. And to me, one of the most meaningful moments in leadership is always watching someone exceed their own expectations. When a person realizes they can do more than they believe, but that's fuel. That's the way I lead. I can't want something more for someone than they want for themselves. But if they want and accept the help, at this point in my career, that my resource has resource, I can be the conduit through which the help flows. On the professional side, I serve as the district manager for Insperity, like I said, providing outsourced HR cost containment strategy, really helping solve those people problems in business. I always say it's like, how do you turn your people problems into profits? And it's not as hard to do as most people make it out to. There's a simple equation that success, or the total output of your business, is directly related to the minimum standards you have in place and the discretionary efforts you get out of yourself and out of your people. And so largely what we do is, on paper, we support small and mid-sized businesses with the systems and support that they need to help them thrive. Future proofing, modernizing those processes internally, those people processes, is what enables them to, whenever they're looking to potentially exit the business, for example, they're able to get a much higher multiple on that than somebody who had. There's that disconnect between what somebody thinks their asset, their business is worth, and what it truly is when they don't put in the effort to developing their people, developing their folks, and then empowering. It's like the same thing. The law of empowerment. It's very central to how I work. And my goal is to fix organizations from the outside. It's to equip the people inside to lead them inside out. If you do that right, it's not that hard. It's turning your C players into B players, your B players into A players. And when you look at what an A player is worth inside the organization, there is a delta between that C player and the A player. And if you can get them from C to B, B to A, that's it's like the 20% of stuff that unlocks 80% of your potential. But
All the
most people just don't think about that. It's largely stewardship, and these aren't metrics. These are livelihoods and families. These are people that are working hard. It's not indentured servitude. It's empowerment's one of those things. It isn't soft. It's the strongest, most sustainable way to build performance and culture.
It's fantastic. Larry, I'm going to tee up the next question with a quote that comes from your portion of the Real World Examples chapter. You said, when leaders truly embody integrity, caring, innovation, teamwork, and excellence every day, values stop being slogans and become the lived behaviors that turn clients into partners and teams into high performing families. Talk about how the clients, the customers, or even team members inside Insperity experience that from you on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think it just ultimately goes back to intentional service. For me, that means being present, listening carefully, which is not very intuitive for me because I tend to be very loquacious by nature, coming from the broadcast industry, love to talk. And then showing consistency and accountability, especially when it's inconvenient, when it's not easy. People often feel your values before they even hear you talk about them. We're all animals, and we can sense things. So if my leadership isn't experienced as support and clarity, then it's just theory. So I want every interaction to leave people feeling seen, heard, and strengthened. I've had people tell me, "Hey, Larry, I feel like you believed in me when I didn't." So that sort of thing, and those are the things that get me up and keep me coming back. Leadership is really living in someone else's results, but not taking responsibility for any of the success and taking accountability for all any failures.
100% in lockstep, brother. Now, you've not been at Insperity for a tremendous long time. It's not been your entire career. You've done a lot of really, really cool things. And you just in the last, I don't know, within the last year for sure, maybe the last 6 months, taken on a significantly higher level of leadership responsibility. Talk about how the organizational values at Insperity have aligned with your personal values.
Well, it's everything we've talked about. I mean, again, they provide the time and the resource. It's really one of those things where it's a $6 billion publicly traded company, largest company I've ever worked with, 4,500 corporate employees, 12 plus thousand clients nationwide, 300 plus thousand employees under management. But the funny thing is that they started from very humble beginnings. And Paul Servardi started the company with and three other folks with a couple filing cabinets and telephone as admin staff and grew it to what it is today. So all big businesses today were once small businesses, and it's kind of like the old what's the farmer's insurance. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So it's one of those deals where we just got to find out where do you want to go, how do you want to get there, do you have the horses in the barn to get there, and then from there, what level of resource do we need to deploy in order to help you on that path. And it's hard for us because obviously every business is similar yet different. Everybody has different roles and goals inside of various organizations. So it's largely just about figuring out, hey, where are you today? Where do you want to go? And we're just uniquely scaled to help businesses go as far as fast as they want to.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Share an example of where you guys as a team, I know you do a lot of community impact type things, but whether it's a specific industry or just something in the community that you've been a part of with Insperity that you've seen make a tangible difference.
I mean, we just had this is kind of like I guess, the law of navigation in action, a recent impact story. We worked with a client navigating through a period of significant change, new structure, new roles, a lot of uncertainty. And instead of trying to force the quick fix, we really approached it through a partnership. So first, we listened deeply, then we helped map the landscape together, what's working, what's fragile, what success would look like 90, 120, 180 days out. That the law of navigation and motion, help chart the course, anticipate those obstacles, and then build in the room to adjust as necessary because as we know plans the distance between point A and B is not always that straight linear line. There's always a lot of twists and turns, so we combined a lot of practical support, HR, compliance, leadership coaching, clear communicative rhythms so that each team member felt like they were in the dark, as well as their direct reports. And then over the next few months, saw more morale stabilization, engagement rise, and leaders step forward who hadn't been able to really been visible before. And the takeaway was that we really showed up. We didn't show up with magic answers. It's that we built the capability internally, kind of didn't give them the fish, taught them to fish, and then we worked with them, not for them. And when people are equipped and empowered, they create stability again from the inside out.
Yeah,
And
love
I,
it.
and I tend to oversimplify things. Obviously, there's a lot more complexity to it, but sometimes it's easy to make things hard. It's hard to make things easy. And a lot of times in business, the simplest approach is the most effective approach. So we tend to love to church stuff up.
Y Yeah, and the reality is, to your point, it's hard to make things easy. That took a tremendous amount of work to make sure it was simple, that they could own it rather than just saying, "Hey, we'll fix it for you." That's usually
Well,
the
it's the benefit again in our case. Obviously, myself and my team, we handle a lot of the client-facing initial interactions, that sort of thing. But then we have resource on the back end with our service team here, our local service teams, and that sort of thing. Again, pull in the resource depending on what the company needs, the complexities of the solution, and that sort of thing, and help keep them on task and on time.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I want to challenge you on something personally and your core values. And I'm going to cite, because you've brought out some of the laws, I'm going to cite the law process where John Maxwell says leadership develops daily, not in a day. Talk to me about one of your core personal values that's really driven you to keep that leadership development journey in place for yourself.
I've always believed you can't pour from an empty cup. And so you've got to, it's in an air emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before you take care of somebody else. So sometimes you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. So the most important meeting I have every day is with myself. First thing in the morning, I'm a 5 a.m. gym rat, have been pretty much all my life, but that's my time to get my mind right. Again, think about, process my day, figure out what I need to do, try to be intentional and aware of how I think, I feel, and I move on a consistent basis, not a robot, not perfect by any stretch. Nothing's perfect in an imperfect world. In fact, I'm a recovering perfectionist, is what I always like to say. So I've had to learn that things don't move at the speed and the timing of Larry, level set that stuff. I just always make it a point to continue investing in my own growth, whether it's through reading, coaching, through communities like yours, and just staying a student of leadership. Growth isn't an event, it's a rhythm. I want to model that for my team. If their ceiling's limited by my current level of leadership, then I owe it to them keep expanding so their opportunities expand too.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you. I'm going to give you the hillbilly translation of what you just said. I often say you can't give what you ain't is.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's right.
now, you again, I mentioned this at the beginning that you're contributors to the chapter called Real World Examples. And Cindy and I were blessed to have such an amazing team of folks contribute, be part of that chapter. And you'll be an executive panelist at the upcoming 2026 Leadership Legacy Experience. Now, talk to me about what your belief is for the folks. We're going to detail a framework for how they can build their values into the organization, not on the wall, not just in handbooks, not even on t-shirts, but how they can put it in people's hands at every level of their team so they understand here's what our values are, but more importantly, here's what they look like in practice. What do you believe can happen for someone who truly engages in that process with us?
So one of the reasons I'm excited to be a contributor and a panelist on the 2026 Leadership Legacy Experience is I'm excited about what these tools can do for folks. They make values practical. They help leaders translate intention into identity and identity into daily behavior, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. People, as I said earlier, we're all animals, but we're not dogs. Although you do train people how to treat you and vice versa. Early on in my career, it was always like, I've got to have all the answers. I've got to answer all the questions. I got to be the smartest person in the room. And my journey now is I've learned, hey, you know what? I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. If I am, I'm in the wrong room. But ultimately, the smartest person in the room is the room. It's the collective intellect of the group. When teams have a shared language around values, they can build culture by design, not culture by default. And there's so many companies that I see where culture's created for them, not by design. I'm a big believer in control what you can control, your own thoughts and your own actions. So it aligns with decision making, it improves trust and accelerates performance in a very healthy way. So what I'm most excited about is the multiplication effect. When one leader grows in a meaningful way, that growth ripples throughout the team, the organization, and then ultimately their community. When I get better, my team gets better. When the team gets better, their clients get better. That impacts the lives of their teams and vice versa. There's a multiplier effect to all of that.
100%. I love every stitch of that. And it really ties to, I just finished a manuscript for a book that'll come out in 2027 called Leveraging Leadership Growth, Strength Through Great Professional Relationships. And it's really along the idea of, Larry, I'm mediocre at best in anything. I've never felt talented. I've never been very, very good at anything. But man, I've been blessed with some amazing relationships with some incredible leaders. And praise God, I've got to learn from them. And I count you as part of that. It's just so fun to have people around me that I can learn from every single day. So on the heels of that, I'm going to ask you, if somebody's young and they want to develop leadership influence in their career, that's not a supervisor, that's not a manager, that's not an executive title, it's influence. You said that earlier. What advice would you give them to develop that influence to truly lead?
For young professionals, and I practice this in my own career, practice this day. If you want to lead, start by serving. Add value where you are. The law of addition. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Meet people, find out what their problems are, and then lean on the folks around you to help find those solutions. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to know where to find the answers. Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point. Paul Revere goes off one way saying the British are coming. The British are coming. William Dawes goes the other way. The British are coming. The British are coming. Exact same message, okay, but accepted and communicated very differently. People listened to Paul Revere because he was a connector. He didn't know who William Dawes was. So the thing is, become that connector. Like in our organization, I can tell them, you don't have to know all the answers. You just need to know where to find them. Or that's good. Resource has resource. So take responsibility before you take authority. Again, law of navigation. See the big picture. Anticipate the challenges. Bring a steady hand when things get bumpy, and empower others at every chance you get. You can help. The humblest person can help, and the youngest person can help somebody in an impactful way. You just have to be aware and intentional in what you're doing. So give people trust, the tools, and the room to grow. In my case, my goal is not to create followers of my team, it's to create more leaders. So if I become a better leader, they become a better leader, then like I said, there's that multiplier effect. So the other thing I would say is be a person who does those small things with excellence, the hard things with character. Don't chase titles, chase growth, find a mentor, and then also be a mentor at the same time.
That's fantastic. I'm just giddy as I'm listening to everything that you're sharing there with that. I often get asked, how do you define leadership? And I say, it's not a title, it's a verb. And that verb is defined by serve other people around you. And that's leading. If you're not doing that, then you're not leading. So, Larry, I'm going to ask one final question. And as I give you time to think about it, because I didn't provide this to you in advance, I'll share some of the details. So the question is, what have I not asked you that I should? Now, as you think about that, I'll share that there in the show notes, wherever you're accessing this, there are links to Larry on LinkedIn. There's links to Insperity on LinkedIn. There's links to Insperity's website. And you can obviously find the Values Advantage and the upcoming 2026 Leadership Legacy wherever you're looking for that as well. But Larry, what is it that I should have asked you here that I haven't so far?
Great question. To me, it's one of the things. What are some of my favorite sayings or the things that I always hit in my mind when I'm having a tough day or somebody's just, I've always remind myself and wrestled in high school, went into college, coached wrestling, that sort of thing. So it's kind of like the hard work piece where hard work works and success comes before work, only in the dictionary. So I always remind myself if I'm having a tough day, if I'm faced with a tough situation, if something doesn't go my way from a business perspective or what have you, I always look at myself and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? What's the lesson? Because I've had things where over my career, where I've mucked stuff up any number of ways. But the thing is, I've had good bosses and leaders who said, hey, look, you know what? Hey, you just made a $20,000 mistake here. If I'm going to invest $20,000 in you in the University of Life, what did you learn from it? So just always be asking yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this? What's the lesson? Because things don't go our way more than they do. And so it's also that subtle mindset shift between there's bouncers and splatters. So there's people where things don't go their way, they splat and they lay there and wallow in it. Oh, poor me. I'm never going to do this. I'm never. And then there's the bouncers. And again, this is the wrestler. You hit the match, get back up. You're going to sit there and say, hey, look, what did I learn from this? What can I do better? How can I apply this to the next opportunity that I have? And just always be learning, always be looking for that lesson in what's going on.
That gave me chills because as you and I have this conversation, what I'm working on right now is for the big picture outline to really draft the theme for a book that I'll put out in 2028 that's on basically the idea from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. In every adversity is the seed of an equal or greater benefit if you can find it. And it's those lessons. It's the cost of education, right? I love that you shared that, but it resonates with me. I don't know that I've ever had any immediate success. Matter of fact, I've never had any big success. But by golly, there's been a bunch of little ones along the way that have compounded, and it's given us some cool opportunities, but it's kicked our ass sometimes in the process, brother.
Yeah, and like I said, I remember success to me as I look at my definition of success is doing what you want to do with people you want to do it with. And if you do that and you're helping other folks, we've all had our share of challenges and tragedy in life and that sort of thing, myself included. And so it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you deal with it that makes the difference. And you can respond positively or negatively. Ultimately, that's all you can control. Like I said earlier, I can't want more for somebody than they want for themselves. But so I control this vessel right here. Anything other than that, you're setting yourself up for failure on a multitude of levels. So yeah, control your mindset, control your own thoughts, your own actions, and learn the lessons of life and figure out what you're supposed to learn from every interaction that you have with somebody.
Yep. And to bring it to a close, and I'll give you a chance if there's anything else you want to wrap up with, I'll say everything that you just said, when values are in place and we've got a clear picture of what those values are, it makes all of that possible. If we don't have that clarity around values, it's harder to get the people in your life that you can be truly in lockstep with.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Larry, thanks for being with me today on this. I really appreciate the involvement in the book, the being willing to serve as an executive panelist at the event. We just appreciate the relationship we have with you and Ingrid and the team at Insperity. And gosh, thanks for being with us. I'll close by saying that if you're catching this, wherever you're at, we used to in our podcast format, we used to say, hey, reach out to us and we'll give you this trial or that trial of a complete leading at the next level program. What I'm going to say today is we've revamped a lot of that, where we've got the continuing education credit, we've got the human resources stuff, that's all available still, but we've got different tiers and different formats. If you need any of that, or you'd like to go deeper and have a targeted growth plan that serves you over time, that law of process, if you will, your ongoing journey, reach out to us at at dove-development.net, and we'll work through that with you and give you some different options to look into how we can best serve you. Again, Larry, thanks for being part of this. All the stuff's in the show notes. I would encourage any of you seeing this, wherever you're accessing it, reach out to Larry, get to know what he and Insperity do, and see how those values can be lived out every day and how it can benefit your organization. Make it a great day, everyone. God bless. Go ahead, Larry.
No, I was just going to say, if I've shared anything that's helpful, I'd love to continue the dialogue. Folks can find me, connect with me on LinkedIn, learn more about Insperity, how we help the businesses, communities. So appreciate the time, Wes.
Absolutely, sir. We've absolutely enjoyed every step of the process with you guys. See you guys soon. Make it a great